It's 7 o'clock on a Friday night, and where else would I be but here with you? DJ Stutz here with Little Hearts Academy USA, and it's a lovely spring day here in Colorado with lots of high pollen rates, and so we are just enjoying this day. So we've been talking the last couple of weeks about adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, and what that means to our young children, our little guys. But today I wanted to expand that a little bit with your own ACEs. We're all grown-ups, but that doesn't mean that our own childhood experiences haven't left a huge impact on who we are, how we react to other people, how we parent, the things that set us off, the things that we back away from. All of those things are tied into much of the childhood experiences that we have had. And, you know, I'm sure most of our experiences are good, and we need to concentrate on those. But a lot of us have some, and I think almost all of us really will have a memory or two that wasn't exactly great, right? And so those may just be small things and you were able to work through them. You had a great family that helped you manage them. But according to the CDC, 61% of adults have had at least one ACE in their youth. And so that comes out to like 2/3 of us as adults have had at least one. So 1 in 6 adults have had at least 4 or more ACEs in their life. And so, you know, if there's just one and you're managing through it, when you get to 4, 5, 6, 7, or some are chronic and they were throughout your entire childhood, those are going to have a greater impact on who you are and how you manage with life. So at least the top 10 causes of death are actually connected with childhood trauma and our bodies reacting and our minds, our brains reacting to that. So preventing childhood trauma can reduce the number of adults with like depression and all of those other things by a lot, wouldn't you say? So a tough childhood can actually really become a tough adulthood. And we all know people who are just struggling through life and just getting through step by step or not getting through. And sometimes we shake our heads and wonder, what's their deal? They need to just, you know, straighten up and fly right. But there's a disconnect that may be preventing them from being able to get all their act together and moving forward. So when we're able to see the connection between these childhood experiences and who we are today, or we're able to see a connection between those childhood experience and someone that we care about who is struggling, these can open the doors to a lot of things. It can open the door to better healing. It can open the door to giving better grace to those who are struggling. And it gives us some answers on where to look to gain that healing and support, and to give healing and support. And so we want to really take some time to understand. Now, it doesn't come easy. It takes a lot of work to get through it all, but just being in the progress of cognitively, or not progress, process of cognitively working towards stronger health can actually begin with a feeling of hope and promise. And that is kind of like the light that shines on you. I don't think it's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the light at the beginning that is going to get you through the tunnel, hopefully. But, you know, that tunnel is a journey. It's not something that's going to happen, you know, overnight. I don't think that I think that you spend all of your life managing and understanding who you are and how you got there. And what does that mean for your present moment? And so, you know, you may think you've got it all. Oh, I've worked this out. This is great. I'm doing wonderfully. And then something will happen that will trigger a response. And you've got to stop and say, wow, where did that come from? Right? And so it's more of a journey than a destination in the way that I'm looking at it. So let's think about, what are these childhood traumas maybe that you've experienced? We've talked about it in what our children experience, but let's look at that a little bit. You know, it can be emotional abuse, which is being constantly belittled, made fun of, humiliated, constantly being insulted, demeaned. And then with those things can come that emotional result of being in fear for your safety. Now there's actual safety concerns, that is abuse. And that's another part of it, which is the physical abuse. But there's an emotional piece that comes with that, as well as constantly being afraid of, do I say this? How do I act this way? Will he or she get mad? And you're constantly worried about, how do I keep this person in my life happy so that they're not going to abuse me? And that's an emotional piece to that. The physical abuse, of course, is, you know, being hit, pushed, grabbed with enough force to leave marks on you. And, you know, it can be a lot greater than that. Being struck with objects, being struck with extension cords, or belts, or things that are actually, will leave a deeper physical wound. Those physical wounds will translate into emotional wounds as you move along in life. There's sexual abuse that comes on. And, you know, it may not be, although it is sometimes, you know, the full-blown sexual nightmare, but it can be someone who just makes inappropriate touches here and there that don't seem like a big deal. But if you are constantly having to watch that, you know, with an uncle or a teacher, a coach, or, you know, whomever, but if you're constantly having to deal with that, that is sexual abuse, and that becomes chronic, and that's going to have a huge effect on you, your relationships, how you relate to sexual activity, all of that stuff it's gonna do it. Another thing was maybe watching a parent or a step-parent being subjected to violence. And I say parent, we think, of course, about men abusing women, but long time ago, I was actually a 911 dispatcher for 3 years, and we got calls from men who were so ashamed and so embarrassed, but they were afraid that, you know, if things kept going, they would lose control. We had one guy who called he had actually had his arm broken because his wife got mad and hit him hard enough with the rolling pin. Yes, that stereotypical crazy thing, but she actually hit him hard enough with the rolling pin and broke his arm. But he was so humiliated that he had been putting up with this behavior for a long time. So it can go either way. But a child who has been in a home and has had to witness that is going to be greatly affected as they maneuver through life. If there is anyone in the household that is abusing substances, so we're looking at alcohol, drugs, and now even marijuana, it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a sibling. It could be a cousin that came to live with you because they are having so much trouble at home. They're thinking maybe getting them out of that situation will help, and they are continuing on with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. It can be a parent, and very often is, but it can also be someone else in the family. And you're a young child watching all of this going on. That's a traumatic effect on you. So let's go on. Was someone in the household dealing with their own mental illness? So if you had a parent who was bipolar, schizophrenic, dealing with chronic depression, and that's just the main obvious ones that we hear about. There's a whole encyclopedia, I think, sized list of different mental disabilities, mental illnesses that can make the parent or a sibling react in certain ways, and that can cause issues. So today, I think a lot about, kids who are, maybe you have a sibling that is severely ADHD, or is chronically disabled, and a lot of that attention goes, of course, to that child that needs all that extra help. But sometimes these other kids get left behind, and how does that affect you? How did that make you feel about yourself and your value, right? And then there's parental separation and divorce. That's very traumatic for kids. I think this one, was there a criminal actually living within the household? Again, could be a parent who's constantly having trouble with the law. It could also be a sibling, older or younger, and you're constantly torn between being frustrated with them, wanting to protect them, being afraid that, the police are going to come and take them away. Will I ever see them again? Worried about kids worry about all kinds of things. And sometimes you may think, well, it's my fault that, they're off doing things. Kids are really good at being egocentric, and everything kind of centers around them. So if the parents divorced, it was my fault. If I had been a better kid, if I had been nicer, or, if a sibling is off having issues and troubles, what did I do to cause this or to add to it? And so when kids are so egocentric, it does all surround them in their minds. So then there's that piece of emotional neglect, where you have a parent that is very distant, doesn't spend time with you, doesn't show a lot of love, doesn't show support. They don't ever come to your events. They're just uninterested in you. Or sometimes they don't know how to show it, and so you perceive that as an emotional neglect. Why is my parent not interested in what I'm doing? And then, of course, there's the physical neglect, which is not providing the necessities for you. So I've had children in my kindergarten, and some preschool classes, that in the dead of winter, in the Metro Denver area, will show up to school in like flip-flops that are way too big for them even. And hey, Paul, and they will, where are your shoes? I always had a stash. I've always had people who would donate things, and sometimes brand new things, coats and shoes and clothes and things for these kids who would come. Well, I couldn't find my shoes, or my shoes got broken, or whatever, and all they could find was their mom's flip-flops, and there's 4 inches of snow outside. And so we'd go in and have to find some socks and shoes that would fit them. And we always made this like a shopping, and this was a good thing for them. I didn't want them to be embarrassed by it, but they needed to have something that was more appropriate for them. And so another thing with physical neglect is, a lack of shelter. Basic needs like food. There's not enough food in the house. And maybe it's because, you just have a parent that was just incompetent in their own life, whether that's from, mental illness, a disability, drug or alcohol abuse, for whatever. That parent, maybe they love that child to death, but they don't understand what a child really needs. And so they are unable to provide that for the child, for their own thing. So, there's a ton of things that we could look at for this. and look back on. And maybe as I'm going through some of these, you're thinking back and saying, yep, that sounds familiar, right? I relate to that. And so that's good that you're looking back and you're seeing that, and you're seeing, okay, this might be the cause of this or this or that, but then what are you going to do about it? Well, one of the things that I can recommend, and I'm going to put it, after we're done here, I'll just put it in the comments under our video, but there was a test that was used in this ACE study that was done over lots of years, several years ago, but they continue to do some stuff, and there's a link to the questionnaire that was used in that ACE study. And so it might help you to go through and look at those questions, answer them, and kind of see what that means for you. But that's a good place to start. And so I'll put that link, like I said, in the comments below once we're done with this. So knowledge is power, and that is true. And once you're able to understand that your body and mind are reacting to these early childhood experiences, you can begin to take the necessary steps to healing. And isn't that, a huge goal? Because that's going to only help you be a better parent. You've got to stop and think, geez, do I fly off the handle too fast? Do I find myself repeating the negative statements my parents said to me, to my own children? What does that mean? And what is that doing to my kids, right? No parent is perfect, especially not me. Oh, yeah. But you always keep trying, and you always keep looking for answers to make a better life for your children. And what does that mean? What does a better life mean? Does it mean that you've got the boat and the cabin, and they're wearing the best clothes, and they have all this, too many toys to even keep in their own room, and is that really the better life? Or is the better life being the connection that you have with your children, that you know them so intimately and so deeply that you are aware of their own challenges that they are going through? Or do you keep relating everything back to you, right? Why are you making me so embarrassed? That was embarrassing to me. Why would you say that in front of my friends? I can tell you a time or two when your kids will probably say that about you as well, right? And so we just want to be able to be that caring, strategic parent who is ready and able to look at the situation and realize each one of your children is a different person and will react to things in a different way. And you want to have the strategies in as much ahead of time as you can. I guarantee you they'll come up with situations that you're like, ooh, never thought of that one. And so then you need to think back, look at what's going on, come up with a strategy for the future. But if you have those strategies and you are the strategic parent, that's what you want to be to make life better for your children than what you have. It doesn't mean the bigger house and the bigger yard, and it doesn't mean the cool cars. It means a better you for your children. That's what we're looking at. So if you have multiple ACEs in your life that you're dealing with as an adult, just know that, and see if some of these things are ringing a bell with you, you're going to have a much higher incidence of chronic health problems, things like diabetes, heart disease, liver disease, cancer, and strokes are higher in adults who had multiple and ongoing adverse experiences in their own childhood. It's also connected to mental illness and substance abuses. And in fact, high ACE scores, higher incidences of stress in your childhood is even connected to certain autoimmune diseases found in women. So, I mean, it really can affect you physically. So, and think about, just as we have talked about in the last couple weeks, how chronic stress will affect the development of the brain, the actual architecture of how the brain is built and put together. It's still affecting you. If that brain structure has been altered as a child, it's still altered when you're an adult. And so, you start making compensations, and you start finding little tricks to help you work through emotional times for yourself, things to calm yourself down, things to work out your own anxiety, all of those things. Hey, Julie. So, you want to really pay attention to what is going on. And it doesn't just automatically repair itself because we've become adults. We all know adults who we look at them, and we think, yeah, they're a mess. Or maybe that adult we're looking at is in the mirror and you're saying, yeah, I'm a mess. You want to really pay attention to that. We're still in our adult lives, making all adjustments and compensations for those changes that in our brain structure that occurred as we were growing up. So there's even evidence that consistent and unregulated childhood stress can trigger changes in your genetic makeup. And these genes are connected to your physical and mental health. And if it's in your genes, it's something that many geneticists believe that these genetic mutations can actually be passed on to your children. And so with that then comes the physical and health issues and the mental toil, that can be passed on to your kids. So you want to find ways to work through that. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes on some of the ways that you can work through that. But that toll for as you're an adult can be very significant. Very significant. So these actual physiological changes that we cycle through with mental stress can cause even more mental stress. And then that mental stress can cause more physiological stress, which then causes more mental health stress. And it just is this big spiral that continues on. So we need to find a way to break that cycle. Another thing to think about this in your life. If you are in a high state of stress, it completely wears you out. It wears me out. When I have been through a rough time and things are going hard, I've had to deal with a lot of things, I tend to just want to go somewhere and sleep because I am exhausted. I'm physically exhausted, I am mentally exhausted, and I need to back off for a little while. And the more that happens, the more exhaustion you're feeling, then you start doing things like you give up on physical exercise. You're doing things that maybe are more sedentary or don't stimulate you mentally in a positive way. Your body is just going for that easy way out because you're just wiped out. And so think about what that means for you. It's interesting that the areas of the brain that's affected by all of this is responsible for learning and memory. Now, we've talked about what that does for kids as they're trying to go through school, and they feel like they're the dummies because they takes them longer to catch on. I've had students that you've taught them something and you see they get it. We're so excited. We've hit this breakthrough. You got it. That's great. That's wonderful. The very next day they come to school and it is gone. It was not retained. But do you have some of those issues with you as you're an adult in learning a new task for work, in learning new abilities with technology, trying to figure it out, or learning new things about parenting and dealing with your kids. And yes, I've got this and I'm going to make these changes. And the next day it's gone. Or even an hour later, it's gone. And so memory is one of the things that you can really look at and say, I'm losing it a lot. So either it's early onset Alzheimer's or dementia of some sort, or maybe I have some things that I need to figure out for myself so that I can improve my life, be happier, and bring that to my family, which is so important. So another part of the brain that is commonly affected by all of this is the part that processes fear. So it's your decision-making process and impulse control. So are there things that that you're doing it and you're thinking, this isn't good for me, I should not be doing this, and you're doing it anyway, even while you're telling yourself, I shouldn't be doing this? It happens to me whenever there's Jacqueline around. It's terrible for me. But, you know, what are some other things that may be going on in your life that are so impulse? You just can't control it. Even though you're telling yourself, I have the ability to stop right now, as you're continuing on with whatever it is. And that's part of that brain development or brain lack of development that's occurred as you've been growing up. So you may find yourself that you're one of those adrenaline junkies, that you get excited by putting yourself into dangerous situations. It could be anything from rock climbing, parasailing, all of those things. But it can also be things that are, you get the high out of people that, what's it called? Now I'm having a brain fart. Where you're impulse to steal. And there are people who have tons of money and they will steal things just for the high that it gives them when they've gotten away with it. That's part of all of that. You putting yourself into dangerous situations that you don't need to be putting yourself into. And you think, why did I do that? That was so stupid. Especially when you're caught. But you are, you've got some things that you need to work out, that you're putting yourself in these situations because you have that need to put yourself into those dangerous situations. You struggle with making logical, positive decisions. So think about this in your life. Is any of this sounding familiar? Okay? Are you easily distracted? Squirrel, right? Reference to the movie. But, I'm very much that way. I'm very easily distracted by other things. I'll go off on tangents, and I'm well known for that. But, we may struggle with effective problem solving. So that means thinking, sometimes you get caught in this rut of, this is what I do. This is how I solve problems. For some people, I get very mad very quickly, and that seems to work for me because then people back off. Okay. I don't want to deal with you. But really, that's called a bully. That's called being a bully. And so that's your problem solving strategy. Not okay. You need to think about it. What am I doing? How can I make this? What are other ways then that I can solve a problem? What is my desired outcome? And there are tons of roads to get there. Or it may be that your desired outcome isn't something that's appropriate for you. You shouldn't even want that outcome. And maybe taking the time to really look at your desired outcome and asking yourself, is this something that is good for me and my family? Is this something I would want my children to do? And I've not always, as I have grown and learned a little more about me, my mantra right now is, if I feel like I have to hide anything from anybody, Oh, I don't need you to know I did this. Then I don't do it. Because I just want to be honest and upfront. And if this is something that I would not want people to know about, then I'm not going to do it. And that's one of the things that I'm doing to, manage through some of my things. Are you overwhelmed easily? I see people who are able to multitask and they accomplish so much in their day. And if I tried to do that much stuff, I would just be, whew, I would be overwhelmed. And sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, I shut down. I can't get it done, so I might as well not try, right? Not a good outlook for making progress. And so if you think you're getting overwhelmed easily, that might be something to look at. We've talked about impulse control, but how does that relate to things like smoking, drugs, shopping, eating, right? There are people who are out of control in these areas too, and that's all connected to how your brain is working and functioning and the chemicals that your brain is outputting because of those behaviors. And these are chemicals that make us feel better. And so I don't know all of the ins and outs of how that works, but we're going to get there. So anyway, I see people who make the same relationship mistakes over and over and over. So I can tell you that, it's been a few years ago. I had a little student in my kindergarten class, and he was a pretty violent kid. He had to use markers because if he got mad at someone and he had a pencil in his hand, he would stab them. He was constantly in fights. He used amazingly adult language in kindergarten. And so he was a handful. He was adorable. He had a good heart. He loved helping other people. He's very smart, and so he was able to help other kids with reading or math. So we would use that a lot. But one day, it was the end of the day, and the kids were getting ready to put things away and go home. And I sat down on a chair because I was talking to another student. I don't even remember what I was talking to her about. But this little guy came up and just curled up in my lap like a baby almost and snuggled in on me. And I'd never had him do that before. And so I said, hey, bud, what's going on? And he looked up at me and he had the biggest tears in his eyes and the most worried look on his face. And he said, why does my mom keep calling her boyfriend after he beats her up? And my heart broke. His mom kept going from one violent relationship to another to another. She had 3 kids by 3 different violent boyfriends. And so why? And she would complain about these awful men that she was dating. And in my mind, you're thinking, well, quit dating awful men. Be more selective. But it's beyond that. I mean, that's the simplistic way to answer it and to talk about it. But it was something far deeper within. So anyway, it was just a very sad thing. So do any of these things ring a bell with you? So the biggest mental health, I think, or the most common mental health problem that we will see with people is that of depression. And so, everyone gets a little depressed once in a while. Things don't go their way, whatever. You got in a fight with your sweetheart, or, there's a ton of things that could happen. But when you're dealing with these ACEs, you are going to have more episodes of depression that last longer and often will even become a chronic depression issue. And so, life is full of normal stress and frustration. That's just part of life. Things don't go your way all the time. But, we have to deal with long lines. We have to deal with stupid coworkers. We have to deal with things that are difficult in starting a new job. Even dealing with traffic. We've seen people, sometimes in the same car as we are, and sometimes we're alone and that happens, who just lose their mind over traffic. I mean, okay, we're frustrated, but like to lose your mind and start screaming and yelling and then at the far extreme, shooting people because of they just aren't able to deal with that stress appropriately. What happened at that point? Just as children can get stuck in that high alert stage, and they're always like looking out for safety, for something, just any movement, and they're on high alert. You can be that way too as an adult, and so you need to be thinking about this, how that impairs your ability to regulate the stress responses, and then those become bigger and much larger than the situation ever needed. And so, is that something that's happening to you often? Is that happening to someone in your life, in your family? Is that happening to them? And then, that's a clue that, let's figure things out to make sure that they are safer within themselves, that we're going to reduce health issues, right? And we're going to bring more joy if they can get it worked out. But then we have to regulate too. Are we safe in that situation? And many times, we like to say, oh, this is happening to me because so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And then you go somewhere else and the same things are happening to you. And the one common denominator in those situations is you, right? You can't take a vacation from yourself. Wherever you go, you're there. And so if you're constantly surrounded with, the wrong people, or, that people are cruel, or I can't keep a job, or, I keep getting kicked out. Well, let's look at what's happening in these situations. And sometimes it takes some real heartfelt and difficult internal reflection to start figuring things out, right? If it only happens once, that may be, an anomaly, and that's a crazy person. But if it's happening all the time, you got to take a look at yourself and see what is going on. So just think about what all of these things mean to your ability to be a good employee, your ability to be a good spouse or a family member, a good sister or brother or daughter, grandmother, all these things. Think of what this means to who you are right now. So we see people who have been subjected to multiple ACEs in their childhood, and then they continue that trend. So we see many kids who grew up in alcoholic homes become alcoholic adults. We see people who were subjected to sexual violence as a child. They continue putting themselves in situations where that might happen again as they're adults. So they are, they're more at risk for sexual violence, intimate partner violence, if that's where they grew up and that was going on. If you grew up in a home with a parent who was just emotionally distant, there's a good chance that you may do that to your family because that's what's familiar. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. It does not mean that. But it does mean that you need to do some learning and coming to yourself. And you don't want to overcompensate for that too. You want to find the right place to manage everything efficiently, kindly, compassionately, but with boundaries that are realistic, that keep you safe, that keep your family connections together, your relationships together. And so these are the things that you really want to look at. So, wow, that was a lot of spooky information, wasn't it? Ooh. So, are those people who have had those multiple ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, are they just doomed? No, they're not. But there is some things we're going to have to work, and I say we for a reason. We are going to have to work a little harder to overcome these things, but we can do it. We can manage through. So one of the things is just remember the positive childhood experiences that were in your life, and that can help with much of the damage that was done by these ACEs Accord. So I want you to think about who are the people that made you feel good about yourself. Grandparents. For me, it was my poppy. My mom's grandfather. My mom's dad. My grandfather. Sorry. He was the one person that made me feel truly good about myself. Well, I won't say the one. I also had an aunt, couple of aunts that were really good at making me feel special and valued. And so did you have someone like that in your life? It could have been an aunt or an uncle. It could have been maybe some teachers that you had in school, maybe some church leaders, some great coaches, some good neighbors. Who are the people that you depended on for that positive, I feel good about myself when I'm around this person experience? And then think about, well, why did I feel good about myself when I was with that person? What did that person do that made me feel important to them? And, it's an interesting thing to me that when my poppy died, several of us grandkids, we all felt like we were his favorite. All of us did. We were his favorite. You're not going to tell me wrong. You just think you were his favorite, but I was his favorite. But isn't that wonderful that we all could feel that way and have that intention and that love and that comforted feeling of being able to be who you are, not having to watch out for saying the wrong thing or using the wrong tone of voice, but just be who you are, and he loved you. And so think about who those people were in your life, and then think about what they did that made you feel that way. And maybe that can help you start on the path of knowing what to do, what changes to make in your life, to try and follow their example and move forward. So coming to an understanding of your own experiences is a great tool to help you identify the areas of your life that you need to work on, and that also gives you a direction to work toward. Oh, I see this happened. Okay, I need to move in that direction. So the big key is you need to find help. This is not a journey that is well taken alone. And you need someone who is knowledgeable and whom you can trust to give you a straight answer and help you to ask the important questions. Sometimes we get bogged down in these questions and they are not the right questions to ask. But we don't know what are the right questions to ask. And then you get frustrated and you feel like you're spinning your wheels. But but having someone who is able to help you find a better question and then look for that answer. And then from that, we're going to move on to even a better question from there. And those are the key things. So we want to find help. And so a therapist is great. There's some great online therapy. In fact, there's some studies that show that people are even doing better with online therapy than in person. I don't know why, but there's some. Money can be an issue, and I understand that. And that's why maybe online can help. But that can still, you may be able to go to your church and find counselors. Your church may have therapists that they employ that can help get you started. You want to be sure, though, that you always feel comfortable with, not necessarily if they're asking you hard questions that you are resistant in answering because you're still blocking off that part of your life. That's going to be uncomfortable. So I'm not saying it in that way, but I'm saying that, oftentimes you will go to a therapist and it just isn't a click for you. And so you may have to do some shopping around, even if it's, this good guy, this therapist that's donating time to the church or whatever. And well, he's all I can afford. Well, that doesn't mean that he's going to be the answer for you or she. And so you just want to make sure that you're doing that. So there's some real promising approaches to dealing with all of this that can actually create new brain connections, right? That can help promote new pattern of thoughts as you get moving along and you start learning new behavior, new thought processes, how to deal with certain triggers, what can you do to maybe avoid certain triggers, and what can you do to manage certain triggers that you're not going to be able to avoid. And so when these new patterns start coming into place and you start making new connections within your brain, this is going to help reset our stress responses, and these are the responses that are making us ill, both mentally and physically. So once we can start readjusting that work in our brain, we're going to find that, I'm starting to have better health. I'm starting to feel more clear mentally, and I find that I'm able to stay calm and really think out a process to solve a problem rather than just reacting. You're going to be able to be more strategic in how you move forward in your parenting, but as well as in your relationships and at work, and how you just look at the world. It's going to make things. So I want you to consider your very deepest emotions, the ones that we just don't like to talk about, the fears that we have, the anger that we have. But so there's a guy that's at the University of Texas. His name is James Pennebaker, and he's at the campus in Austin. But he does a lot of research on this, and he says that writing down the emotions that have the most influence on your life. So I get angry very easily. I get sad very easily. I get lonely very easily. I can be lonely in a room full of people. Is that you? So as you write, though, explore your earliest connection to that feeling. Think back on it, but just write or type for 20 minutes straight. Just don't stop. Whatever comes into your mind, don't stop. And then what are the events that these are connected to? What are the things that connects me to them today? And how does this connect to me in my past? So, and they have found that even if you destroy it after, something I kind of suggest, to be honest with you, but even if you destroy it after you've written it down, it's had a positive effect. Now, this is something that's important to me because I'm going to tell you a story about me. And I don't like much telling too many. But there was a time in my life where I was just, I just had so much stress, so much negativity around me. I was struggling a lot and with a deep depression. And one of my friends told me to keep a special journal and just write down all the negative, all the bad, all this and that was happening. And so I did that. I thought it was a great idea. And I even bought a black journal to put it in. And so anyway, after a few months of doing that, I found that I was actually getting worse, not better. And the thought came to me, what are you doing? This is not working for you. And so I wound up ripping those pages out, and I started writing every night one good thing that happened to me that day, one blessing that I was grateful for, one situation that happened, and I started feeling better. There's one particular day that I couldn't think of anything to write. I had nothing good to say. Everything had gone badly. I'd been in an argument with my spouse. Things had gone wrong at work, and my kids were arguing and fighting, and I had nothing. And I sat there looking at this page. Everyone was in bed, and it was quiet. And I thought, I have nothing good to write. And the thought came to me, how dare you? How dare you say that? You had a job. You have a job that is providing. You have a beautiful home. You have these amazing kids. Yes, they fight and argue, but there are wonderful things, and they are a blessing in your life. You have so much food in your pantry that's actually a problem, right? I have friends. Even though I was mad at him for the moment, I have a wonderful spouse that does so much for me and my family, And so that totally changed. That moment was an epiphany for me and totally changed the way I looked at life from then on. And so, that's why I would suggest for me anyway, I wouldn't keep the negatives around, and I would want to balance maybe if you're spending time on the negative, try to spend some time on the positive that's going on in your life as well. Yeah, that's been great for me. So you're going to want to work on things like mindful meditation, learning about being present, maybe doing some yoga, some meditation, but maybe that's a good place to maybe start. Take a critical look at your life and look at the repeating patterns that are happening, the good and the bad, and then look at why are these patterns happening? And if I have some good patterns that are happening, how do I get more of those, right? And then really look at, why am I causing these repetitive negative patterns? Why am I putting up with it? Why am I allowing it to happen? And so, there's that. Think about the things that trigger you, and then consider, what can I do about it? There's something to be said for communal healing. And so finding a support group with a positive, caring manner, then we have a better chance of actually healing when we've got other people that are working with us in a positive way to heal. Sometimes we get in a group and they're like, oh yeah, that's terrible. Oh yeah, da-da-da-da-da, and that's just negative, negative, negative. I would probably cut myself off from those people, at least for a time, to do some healing and to find some positivity. So there might be some positive social ties that you can make. There are groups online that you can join that where people are working through, how to manage that. So having these positive things in your life are going to help promote the oxytocin. I'm going to get beat up for my pronunciation of that. But the oxytocin, which is the feel-good hormone that your body makes. And so, having those positive things will help develop more of that. You need to understand that you are not alone, that there are many others, including yours truly, who share your feelings of loss, shame, guilt, anxiety, and grief, and sometimes connecting with a community where, there are meaningful conversations taking place is a good start. And so being in a place where you can actually lend support to others and you can gain support from others is just a great place for that. So with that being said, I'm asking for some advice from you guys. So I'm thinking about putting together a new group that would be something like Parents of Trauma, where we get together and we look for ways to support each other as we work toward healing and becoming better parents, better people, better community members, better family members as we work together. If you would be interested in something like that, you can always leave a comment, or you could just message me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well, or you could even just send me an email at littleheartsacademyusa@gmail.com. And so there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me if you are interested. If I find enough people who think that would be a good place for someone to start, I would like to bring in some experts that could help us, talk things through and get us off on a good start. I would go ahead and move forward on that if there's the interest. So let me know if that's something you want to do. In the meantime, as always, I would love for you to go to my website, which is www.littleheartsacademyusa.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter, and there you can keep up with all the things that we have going on, any new projects that we have going. I send out a newsletter on Mondays that will cover generally what our live was on and give you some more resources for that. And the link to the ACE study and the questionnaire, that will be in the Monday's newsletter as well, if you want to get that. Or like I said, I'll just connect it in the comments below. So I'd love to have you join us and just become a part of our community. And so I'll look forward to hearing from you. Next week, we have had some deep conversations these last 3 weeks. They've been really heavy learning, some heavy lifting for us. So next week, we are going to be talking about some things you can do to set yourselves and your kids up for a wonderful, fun summer break as we move forward and look to those things occurring very shortly. So I hope you'll join me next week for something a little more fun. So until then, let's teach together. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.